Hello and welcome back to Book Critique, a show where we talk about giraffes and their very large hearts. My name is Imogen and today we are going to be talking about a classic fairy tale, Snow White. We're going to be comparing the book and the film. And technically it's a short story, but we'll call it a book, book first film, haha, sounds nice. If you have not read the Grimm fairy tale and you're not interested in reading it but you want to know what it's about, click the card up there. I did a full summary. So the first film that Disney ever made, Walt Disney Studios. This is huge, right? It wasn't just their first film, it was the first animated film. So this is a huge moment as far as film history goes, and it really did change the game up as far as like the fantasy genre goes in general, as far as like what it was able to accomplish. And just to stress, we're talking, full feature-length films, not just like short films. So this film came out in 1937. What was America like in 1937? I'll tell you, it was pretty depressing because it was the Great Depression. But in all seriousness, people were like starving and dying and like waiting in line for food. This film is a byproduct of its time. So in preparation for this video, I watched like a special making of video about Snow White on Disney Plus, and they had this really interesting quote that I wanted to share with you. It said basically this film contained American sensibility layered on European fairy tale, which they believe lent to its genuineness. And you can really see that and you can feel that when watching this film. And now there are huge differences between, the Grimm fairy tale that was like really, really dark and what Walt Disney came up with for this film. And there's a reason for that, because I think this film is a byproduct of the time period that it was made in. So let's start with just like the beginning of the story when we're introduced to Snow White. She's a princess and yet she's dressed in rags and the bottom of her skirt is all torn. Even though her situation isn't ideal, she's still singing. She's still positive, industrious, and kind, despite her circumstances. And that's the type of heroine Disney felt that the American people needed at this time. When you think about it, this film was, made by starving artists of the Great Depression. Artists typically aren't known for being, like the most well-off in most time periods, but especially during the Great Depression. So the fact that Walt Disney was making this film during the Great Depression led to him having like a huge staff of artists that were like really desperate for work because he was the only one hiring. And he made a film that basically was about someone who was kind of roughing it and still just working hard and staying positive and being happy. So that's the message he was trying to bring to people at that time. So to compare this to the Grimm fairy tale, at the offset of the story, Snow White is a 7-year-old girl. And even at the age of 7 years old, she's still 1,000 times more beautiful than the queen. So the queen wants to have her killed. And the story obviously is going to be much darker and more violent. So when the queen decides to hire the huntsman to kill Snow White, she says that she wants her lungs and her liver from the huntsman. So when the huntsman spares her life, Snow White's life, he brings back to the queen the lungs and liver of a boar, and the queen has them boiled in salt and eats them, which is like obviously why Disney didn't put that in the film. It makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting that instead of using the lungs or liver in the story, he does still have the queen request Snow White's heart as proof that Snow White was dead. So I just thought that was kind of a good point, because as far as children's minds go, I mean, obviously if you think about it in a literal way, having someone's heart cut out of them is still really violent. But in the sense of the story, when you're watching it, it seems almost more figurative, even though she's literally holding a chest and saying, like, you're going to bring me Snow White's heart, I'm going to put it in this chest. But the way that it's said, I think heart just sounds more figurative. And for children, it's just easier to picture like a general shape and not the actual thing. So one scene that I think Disney Animation Studios like really just brought to life in a fantastic way was the scene where Snow White is running in the forest. So she's like afraid of the trees, and there's like a part where like one clings to her skirt, and like then she like tries to break away from it, and after that all of the trees kind of come to life and Snow White's really afraid of them. And they said in that like extra clip thing where they're explaining the making of the film that all of that's supposed to be taking place in Snow White's imagination, or at least the viewer's supposed to think that like, is that in her imagination? Is this really happening? And that is something that like you can tell they really read the Grimm fairy tale in detail and just kind of brought to life this one line that I'm going to read to you. It says, she was so afraid that she just looked at the leaves on the trees and did not know what to do. And then after that, it kind of talks about her like going through the forest terrified. But I thought they took that line like, okay, she looked at the leaves on the trees and she didn't know what to do. And they just like took that one sentence and made this incredibly like, I remember when I was a kid, I was so afraid of that scene. And they just like really brought that one little detail to life in a way that I thought was really awesome. So one huge difference that I thought was kind of interesting, just because the Disney film spent so much time on it, is the scene where Snow White enters into the dwarf's house and she's with all the animals, and that's where the Whistle While You Work song comes on and they're all like cleaning. But in the book, or you know, in the like short story, when Snow White enters into the house, the narrator actually remarks on how clean the dwarf's house already is before she gets there. So basically, like when the dwarves in the story find her, they say like, you can keep house for us and we'll let you live here. Not when she gets there, like in the film, it's all like disgustingly dirty. The dwarves in the book were actually like super industrious and like kept their own house quite well. So then you have like a whole bit where Snow White is like, you know, they have a bunch of like gags going on, and, you know, Snow White's teaching them how to clean and the animals are helping her clean and all of this cleaning is going on. And I think that that was kind of to like make it more palatable for children as well, just so that parents felt like, oh, okay, this is like teaching my kid to like be clean, and now we have like a little song we can sing together and all of that stuff. So I think that was definitely a very much like Disney-fied scene. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, because it's still super adorable, but I think that that was definitely an intentional huge change, and probably the biggest change I would say from the original text. So one part that I thought was really interesting from the making of Snow White that I wanted to share with you was someone said basically that Walt emphasized the need to have real characters, real emotions, and pathos. A lot of people were very doubtful of Walt's vision at this time. They felt that he could not make a feature-length animated film that would capture people's attention. And he felt if you had these elements, the film could still work and stand on its own, even if it's animated. And he was totally right, obviously. One character that really emphasizes this is the Queen. They changed a lot about her story, especially the ending of the story, but I feel like they really captured the essence of the character and what made her like sink to such lows. The thing that interested me about the Queen the most was that she would literally rather like die than not be number one. Because in the story of Snow White and the Grimm fairy tale, there's like a constant equation of like beauty and power. And for her, being the most powerful and the most beautiful was her top priority. And she didn't care what she had to do as long as she kept it. But she sinks to such lows throughout the story in order to attain that it's like she loses her humanity. I have a quote here from the Queen. She said, "Snow White shall die if it costs me my own life." And you could definitely see that reflected in the story. She literally becomes the thing that she fears most in order to kill Snow White. She becomes absolutely hideous. When she uses magic to transform herself, she is like the most ugly creature. And in her attempts to become the most beautiful, she dies a hideous old lady. So a huge difference between the Disney film and the Grimm Brothers story is how the Queen dies. In the Disney film, she's like trying to roll a rock onto the dwarves on a cliff's edge, and then she falls, an old lady, and dies and has the like rock fall onto her. That is very, very, very different from the way that she dies in the Grimm fairy tale, which is she gets invited to a wedding and she thinks that Snow White is dead, but then Snow White is this new, like, really beautiful queen. And at Snow White's wedding, they put, like, iron shoes into burning hot coal and make the queen wear them and dance until she dies. So, yeah, it got, like, really super violent. So obviously it makes a ton of sense why Walt Disney chose to take that extremely graphic ending out of his film. And speaking of huge changes, Snow White in the film is not saved by true love's first kiss. I know, crazy. So the dwarves put her in like this glass casket, and they put her on a mountaintop, and one of them like stands guard and watches her, and the prince comes, and when he sees her, he just like falls in love with her, even though she is 100% dead, and she's been dead for a while. But the prince wants to like take her home, and long story short, he ends up bringing her home, and there was like the apple lodged in her throat, and when one of his servants stumbles, the apple gets dislodged from her throat, and she wakes up and she marries him. So I guess that's a little more realistic than like a kiss waking you up. She was just like, and then she just woke up, and there you have it. So overall, I just wanted to say that I think that both the short story and the film are just absolutely classic. Even though the short story is really graphic, I just love it. I read it a couple of months ago and I just can't stop thinking about it, and I've reread it several times since. I just think that the themes of like the connection between beauty and power, and there are just like numeric themes and just so many facets of it that I find totally compelling and interesting. The film also, I just think, was totally just groundbreaking for its time. Walt Disney had a vision and he carried it out and made just something that really did change the cinematic world. And I love them both, and I'm very happy that you chose to watch this video of me talking about something that I love. So thank you. If you've made it this far in the video, I'll give you a treat. Did you know that giraffes have the largest heart in the animal kingdom? Their hearts weigh around 26 pounds. So if you made it this far, you can comment giraffe hearts are 26 pounds or something about that in the comment section down below. And if you've enjoyed hearing me ramble about something that I'm into, you might enjoy seeing me do that about other things. If you like Snow White, probably my Snow White video where I talk about the Grimm fairy tale, and you know, whatever one this one is. If you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me, and I would very much appreciate it. Thank you kindly, and have a wonderful day. Bye!